Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to an AI special. This is almost a hybrid, ladies and gents, a cross between the transfer show and just general daily read and bits that are going on at the moment. I'm your host, Dave Davis, coming to you from a pretty cold still Edinburgh. I was literally podding about an hour ago and it's not got much difference. Just one of those, despite the fact it is March, autumnal feels. But hey ho, hopefully it's nice where you are. This one, ladies and gents, summer departures. It's always an interesting one, and a few people have already messaged me about this, saying all focus should be on the team, all focus should be on trophies, all focus should just be on that, apart from anything else. Every fan wants to win the league. Every fan's maybe or hopefully got a Champions League, the Carabao final to go to. I'm looking forward to. Of course, it's all about success. It's never about anything different at Liverpool Football Club. However, let's just rewind a week ago or so to what Arne Slot said in the embargo section. Arne Slot specifically talked about himself that Liverpool were already making plans for the summer. That last year it was about coming in, doing a full assessment of the squad, and he mentioned him and Richard Hughes, sporting director, and now they've done that and they're already making plans for the summer. Arne Slot's words, not mine. So squad planning, squad overhaul, we know the traditional Michael Edwards methods. They always look 2 to 3 windows in advance. I think if anyone thinks they haven't been considering this summer window, plans are well underway, living under a rock somewhat. So that's what we're here to look at today. What are the potential departures? Who could it be? And already comments are starting to fly in. So Scott McClintock there saying Nunez and Tsimikas, I definitely see leaving. I don't want to see Elliott leave. He loves the club and most of the fans love him. He's just had some bad luck with injuries. All three, we've got to discuss Scott and everyone else. No two ways about it. The only real systematic way to do it, people, is to look at the areas of the pitch, isn't it? We'll move closer and closer to goal, as Liverpool look to do each week, and see who we think could be on the chopping block. Although one from each row, as it were, the 3 contracts, they still linger. It's absolutely crazy in one way that we are here at the 1st of March, a few months left to go on the contracts of Trent, Virgil, and Mo Salah. It just seems insane in one way to say, but in another, have we just become numb to it a little bit? I don't know what the right phrase, what the right terminology is. Everyone is almost waiting for news to drop, something to break. The only thing you can really glean recently is a sustained media briefing. Now, some of you are going to look at me and say, what the heck do you mean by a sustained media briefing? Well, this one has come up recently, hasn't it? David Ornstein talking about, and it is a positive update as we phrased it on Anfield Index, the 3 players. Joining Lewis Steele of the Daily Mail. There was Sam Wallace of the Telegraph as well recently. And it seems to be unanimous. They're all saying the same thing. The noises coming out of Anfield are positive around Mo and Virgil. However, maybe not too much around Trent Alexander-Arnold. That has been a consistent briefing. You've heard me just mention the journalists that are talking about that at the moment. So who knows for definite until they're signed, until they do the Axeline. You can't 100% say you're confident they will all remain, but we're going to have to work off that premise, aren't we? So when we talk and we steer, first of all, towards any goalkeeping or defensive exits, we've got to assume that Virgil van Dijk will be at the football club next year. We have to. It just beggars belief that the best defender in the world, the best defender of his generation, won't be renewed. I think what we see is that as near on impossible, although people could have their thoughts around that. So if we look at the goalkeeping area, there's a bit of false reporting going on with Jaros that his contract ends this summer. It doesn't. And I know Transfermarkt even has his contract as coming up this summer, but he signed a renewal for before he went on loan, to Sturm Graz. So he will be at the football club next year, unless Liverpool do decide to sell him. Now, my personal opinion, I think he will become the new Kelleher, almost the new backup. And as much as we're talking about departures, there's the huge figure of Georgia Marmadashvili from Valencia, isn't there? That deal will be completed, so he will arrive at Anfield this summer. So that's, if you had no exits, 4 goalkeepers. That is not going to happen. It's that simple. The easiest departure, and maybe, just maybe, the easiest departure to pick this entire summer is Queeve, isn't it? Kelleher. Kelleher has a year left to go on his contract, as you can see in the summer. 2026, his contract will expire. This is a player who's done numerous interviews. He did that one at the end of last summer with James Pearce, where he said, I want to be a number 1. I want to move. He was honest and said, I talked to the club previously. Now, if you think about his games this year, Alisson had his injury, which maybe we've come to expect a little bit, and Kelleher goes into the team, does well. Maybe the Newcastle game, that 3-3 where he misjudges the cross, people over-egg that, but not perfect. But you can't expect Queeve to be Alisson. What you can expect is an Irish international who is 26 years old, who has a year left to go on his deal, who wants to play first-team football to depart. I just don't see how you can see Kelleher's future any different. I think the entire world would be absolutely mystified if Kelleher is still at the club, because he's not going to sign an extension, is he? Let's be honest. So for all parties, it makes sense, this departure. Now, the holy goalie, Alisson Becker. An absolute legend, an absolute leader of a man, part of the leadership group, a figurehead for Liverpool. A million things to like about Alisson Becker. I'm desperate for Alisson to stay, just to be clear. He's one of my favourite players. There's so much to like about this man. It's unreal. The best goalie in the world in brass tacks when you put it down to it, isn't he? We want to be clear about what we've heard at Anfield Index. Our information, and we mentioned this on the transfer show, me and Trev, so this isn't like a stark revelation, ITK, anything like that at all. But the information we were having was that Alisson had told Liverpool he was considering his future, hence the Marmadashvili move being accelerated and brought forward. Again, nothing's changed on that regard. So I would absolutely love Alisson to stay. I adore the man. I think he's such a figurehead. There's so much to like about having Alisson between the sticks. It's that insurance, isn't it? That feeling of safety. I do believe, though, 100% honestly, there is a big question mark around Alisson Becker and his future at Liverpool Football Club going forward. If he is to depart, again, hope not, but if he is to depart, he departs winning it all. He departs as the best keeper in the world. It would be with a heavy heart, but it would be with well wishes at the same time, wouldn't there? So, yeah, we will see. But just being honest, as a goalkeeper summary, there are real question marks against the 2 starters right now. We will see what happens this summer. Mike Stone there saying there is a big question on Konate this summer. I think we've got to talk about that as well. And he also says, I think we'll actually look to rebuild this defence like we did the midfield a few years ago. It's an interesting one, but we've got to talk about the defensive element as well. I mean, Virgil has to be signed. There's no debate about that. There's no issue whatsoever. It's just got to be done. Out of the 3 of them, for me, the most important, the leader of the side, the captain, the one who sets the tone. And that is not to belittle or, denigrate Mo Salah whatsoever. An absolute demigod, one of my favourite players ever. They are both as important. Virgil just has to be renewed. As Mike said, Konate. You've all seen the rumours, haven't you? Liverpool have offered him a contract. He's talked about it in a press conference at the same time as well. The latest rumours are that waiting to see what happens, isn't it, with clubs very interested. And of course they would be. who would not be interested in the second best centre half in football right now? I mean, out of all the pairings, all the combinations, however you wish to address it, Konate and Van Dijk is the best in world football. I actually think a little bit they come as a pairing. What I mean by that is, if Virgil stays, I think Konate will too. I think it's almost the case of big bro passes little bro the pen. I honestly think for all the negotiations, and Konate's agent probably is savvy, let's just wait and see what these three are doing. Let's wait and see who's staying. But I honestly believe that if Virgil sides, Konate will follow. I think the two will go hand in hand. I'm confident on that. DK saying there, based on the season style of play, I trust Slot to sign the right players if anyone leaves. TAA is gone, if you ask me. And I have to be honest on this. I think Trent is off. I think everyone's now maybe, you could see it differently, more surprised if Trent is at Liverpool Football Club at the start of next season. So, yeah, for me, the only certainty when I mention those players that I think is leaving is Trent right now. Fullback-wise, the left-back, people will have serious thoughts on this. For me, I suspect Robbo stays. I genuinely mean that. And I know there's going to be people in the comments saying, got to go, he's not been good enough, his legs are fading. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with any of that. Robbo is a legend for this football club. You know, everyone knows this. 8 million, one of the best signings ever, has been world class back in his day. A sensational left back flying up and down that wing. All his attributes are fading. There's no way of dressing that up. Andy Robertson doesn't really seem suited, if you think about it, to an Arne Slot system. The attributes that he has and what Slot's looking for. I don't think you can dress that up either. Competition-wise, everyone in this dog expects a left-back to be brought in. And you've all seen the names like I have. Hato, Kirkes, although they're very different types of full-backs. Nori, we could go on all day, but we're here to talk about departures. I think the Greek Scouser is going to be joining him. Very little doubt in my mind that Kostas Tsimikas will leave Liverpool. And people have said, I understand it, that Robbo could be the one to go and Tsimikas could be the backup. Let's just have a look at some facts and stats here. This season, Kostas has played 1,306 minutes. That's across all competitions. So it looks like 24 appearances. But if you do a quick bit of maths, to be honest, it's only about 12 or so added up all together, isn't it? Look at the Premier League recently, because that's the holy grail. That's the measure. He only came back from an injury towards the tail end of last year, and he was on the bench. But if you look at this, look at the minutes. In the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Unlucky for some, maybe for Kostas. In the last 13 games, Kostas has seen minutes in 7 of them. So that sounds like a rotation, but it's not true. There's only 190 minutes he's had recently, and that was against Newcastle, wasn't it? We were there the Wednesday night. 65, so Brentford. So only 2 starts in those last 13 Premier League games. And look at the minutes in some of them, people. 16, 21, 25, 16, 4. I just don't see at all how he stays at the football club. I just don't. Yeah, I fully expect all the evidence there says that Kostas Tsimikas will depart Liverpool Football Club for me. Mike Stone saying there, not sure I agree. We're looking to the future. We will sign a centre-back. They want to play, which I know minutes will be available. I do think, just to be clear, Mike, we're talking about departures. I 100% expect a centre-back to come in. Now, people will talk, is that a Quanta type of youth? Is it a senior centre-back? Little bit unsure of that, but a centre-back will come in, I've no doubts. However, they will have to accept that if VVD and Konate are there, they are the best 2 in world football. It is what it is. I've no problem with that at all. We'll see what develops. But it is outgoings we're mainly here to talk about in this one. And in terms of outgoings, being honest, I do think another central defender, maybe the utility man, whatever you want to call him, there ain't nobody like Joe Gomez. This isn't just necessarily me saying it. David Lynch has said it on the Media Matters pod a number of times. There has been various articles mentioning Joe Gomez and referencing what they expect to happen. If you think all that way back to last summer, one of Richard Fuse's first attempts at deals, wasn't it? Do you remember the exchange? Joe Gomez was going to go to Newcastle. Anthony Gordon was going to come to us. And also there was the Sam Maguire exclusive around Joe Gomez looking at his future. He'd had the same conversation, a little bit differently, to be fair, than Alisson with the club. London boy looking to move closer to home. Everyone remember that? When he was left out against Ipswich, Paul Joyce also did the article about Joe Gomez looking at his options down south, all those types of things. So I don't think anything will have changed. If he was fit, and it's a shame about Joe Gomez, availability has been an issue throughout his career, but if he was fit, Joe Gomez would be the third choice centre-half. I don't think there's any argument about that. Joe Gomez would also be the third choice right-back. Probably the third choice left-back as well. Joe Gomez is 28 years old. He's an England international. He's experienced. I mean, someone tell me this if I'm wrong, but I think it'll be 10 years, won't it? This summer he'll clock up at the club, if I'm right. Someone please correct me on that if I'm not. Testimonial? I don't know how that works anymore. There's no real testimonials in football because people move on so much. But he will be desperately hard to replace. Even if he was fit now, the way the left-backs have performed, there's probably some games where many would think, I would want him to stay. Yeah, I'd want him at left-back just to offer some solidity. And not everyone's been a fan of Trent's certain performances, but in the grand scheme, there's two things I think it comes down to. Joe Gomez is too good to be a third choice anything for Liverpool. That's a fact. Joe Gomez, as we know, is probably looking to play first team football and move further down south, being a London boy closer to where he's from. When you add all those ingredients up, put in the mix that he didn't complain. He's the perfect club servant. But you think about that potential failed Newcastle swap deal last summer. I just struggle to see how you make the case for him to stay. Just my honest take. You may see it differently. Yeah, Mike there saying Joe will be so hard to replace. Guy that's happy to wait to take his chance. He's never going to let you down. It is a shame for him with his injuries. But I think for him, this will be the time where he actually says, no mas, and looks to move on. And again, someone, if that is the case, with well wishes, and just to be clear at the same time, Joe Gomez should have his pick of Premier League clubs. There'll be a lot interested in him. No two ways about it. Because of his experience, because of his ability. You think of all the teams that would like him. Maybe injuries will count against him for some, but he will have no problem securing a move. And as I look at the rest, I think they all stay, as I've mentioned before. Moving on to this midfield. Just before, though, DK said, Gomez will break down if he's a regular starter. I think he should be happy with his place in the squad, and it's best for him, probably. The ultimate question there, DK, and I get the argument, do you want to be a first choice playing every week in a lesser team, or the third choice, almost everything for Liverpool? And I get that, the element of trophies, but you've seen many players leave big football clubs to play regular first team football. And from what we know with Joe Gomez and moving further down south, I just think that's going to tip it. So there we are. What about the middle of the park? I mean, Arne Slot's playing 4 of them in recent games, hasn't he? We've seen that against City. We saw it against Villa as well. Not so rotated back to what you call normal against Newcastle. But yeah, the 4 senior boys, they're there, aren't they? No two ways about it. There's not a chance unless a ridiculous amount of money arrives on the table for one of those four, that they are being sold. Even then, I just don't think Dominic Szoboszlai, Alexis McAllister, Curtis Jones, Ryan Gravenberch are going anywhere. That is the solid four to build on. And in fact, when you talk about those four, is there a better central midfield combination in the Premier League? City's legs have gone, haven't they? In the middle. Arsenal, you could argue they've got 67 defensive midfielders, even that play up front half the time as well. So there's that argument. But what a collective four we have there. Absolutely brilliant. And they are playing most weeks. Maybe it's injuries that have robbed Curtis of a few minutes here and there. But in terms of those players, something great to build on. It's I don't want to be unkind, but almost, I want to say the backup, maybe that's too strong. But it's the fifth and sixth choices, let's put it that way, who I think have got big questions to ask. Now, people are going to jump on me for this and say, Harvey Elliott, youngster, got plenty of time to develop, still to hit his peak. Liverpool fan, does all the right things, says all the right things. Look at his dad on the documentary. They go home and away. Before he got the injury last season, super sub, all those things, I completely understand. I am not disagreeing with any of those. Let's just look at some facts of Harvey Elliott under Arne Slot this season. A grand total in all competitions of 503 minutes. And that includes 2 full 90 minutes in the FA Cup, people, and mainly the Carabao. I mean, if you actually take away the Cups, he's played 76 minutes, not even a full game in the Premier League. That's quite startling when you say it out loud. Now, here's the mitigation. The broken foot kept him out till November. You can see that. But let's just have a look at recent pickings. Look at this. Look at these Premier League games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In his last 6 Premier League games, 1 minute. He came on for 1 minute at the end against Manchester City. Yeah. Before those, he did 2 games in a row. You could say he came on as sub, but only 22 minutes against Ipswich. I mean, my honest take on this, if you're not going to play Harvey Elliott against Ipswich at home, remember how almost, I'm not trying to be too disrespectful, but that was a stroll, that game. We won it in second gear. If he's only going to get 22 minutes against Ipswich, where is Harvey Elliott going to get his minutes? Even before. Now, it looks 10 minutes against Brentford. And you give him his due. He made that pass, didn't he? When Trent squares it for the deflection and then Nunez. Harvey Elliott is what I would refer to as a game state player. Very specific circumstances facilitate Harvey Elliott's best performances for Liverpool because of our shape and the way we set up. It's got to be a game where we are pinning the opposition in. Trying to break them down, get maybe a late goal. That is a time for Harvey Elliott, who can just play a cute little pass, something smart round the corner. Not been too many of those this season. And I just think, as the evidence says, Arne Slot doesn't fancy this player. Physicality, I think, ultimately counts against him. If you're not going to have wild physical attributes like a Dominic Szoboszlai or Ryan Gravenberch, you've got to be something maybe more. You've got to be an Alexis McAllister. I just don't think Harvey is that. And I remember I was talking to a friend about this last game. He said, you hate him. He said, no, I love so much about Harvey, his attitude, what he wants to do. I just don't see a long-term future at Liverpool for him. I think he has a decision to make this summer. Does he want to stay at the club he loves, boyhood, but accept where he is in the pecking order? And likely someone's going to come in. I don't think there's much doubt of that at all, is there? Or do you want to move on, as a few papers linked you to the likes there? But I think it was Brighton, wasn't it? Villa came up. There was someone else. I can't remember who the links were at sort of January time for around 40 million quid. But be a star there. Be a starter. He has decisions to make. Stephen Landry there saying, I expect Elliott to move on, agrees. Slot doesn't rate him and Elliott needs and wants regular minutes. I agree with that, Stephen. I mean, there was a bizarre thing, wasn't there, from Tim Sherwood this morning saying that, he was angry. I mean, I was at the game. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scowling. He wasn't kicking things on the bench. He's just naturally going to be disappointed. Mike there as well saying, yeah, Harvey plays a point, doesn't it? The PSR offload may make sense, but only if they bring someone in. Yeah, if you do sell Harvey Elliott, the reality is it's booked, as the Premier League say, isn't it, under the PSR rules? It's booked as pure profit. So that may come into the thinking as well. Ultimately, maybe the decision is Harvey Elliott. We'll have to see what happens there. This man as well. I actually say this with such sadness. Wataru Endo, Wata, as they call him in all the press conferences. Actually, more minutes than Harvey Elliott. 712 in all competitions. And just recently, if you were making a case for keeping, and by the way, I'm a proper cult hero, Endo. I love the way that mouthguard goes in and we step to war and we smash into people. We take everything. And he helps you out games, doesn't he? You think of Wolves recently, even City, they're part of the safeguard. Just the 19, 20 minutes he plays have been important recently. And if you look at the last 4 games in isolation, he's come on 3 times. I just wonder if Arne Slot is starting to trust him a bit more. That game there, do you remember the draw at Goodison? Oh, that 2-2. If you would ask Arne Slot or shoot some truth serum, I think he would admit that Endo he would have brought on maybe regrets that. Hey, you know, sliding doors moments in football. But I think there's real trust from Slot now in Endo. And he's also talked on a Slot about Endo's attitude and how good that is in his press conferences and how much he's impressed. And you think that's nothing, just think about the players he's talked about on the other side recently and been quite critical of. So that stands in good stead. All that being said, Endo made a call last summer, didn't he? Do you remember when we rejected that bid from Marseille and it came in and all the briefings were quite clear that Arne Slot didn't fancy him in that 6 and he would be well down the pecking order? Like the absolute leader and warrior, took it on the chin, said, I'm not having it. I will prove you wrong to Arne Slot. And maybe slowly but surely, as I say, the trust is gaining. It is very late in the season, though. He is 32 years old. It's that age where you want to be playing week in, week out. Yeah, it's a tough one. If you ask, this is where I'm swithering a bit. I would love him to stay around, but I actually think there'll be a departure of ways with Endo, with everyone's best wishes. He is a hero, as Paolo Catano says there. Yeah, he is our Japanese hero. He is a cult figure. We absolutely adore him. There's no 2 ways about it. I just wonder, at 32 years old, with clearly another midfielder to come in, so his minutes could get squeezed even more, how he feels about that. It would be no surprise to me. I suspect there will be clubs who are interested in Endo, both in the Premier League, the Bundesliga. Could, Marseille, anyone come back in? We'll have to see. Yeah, Endo's one. I would lean towards, I think he will depart, but it's not as clear cut for me. Listen, there's a lot of people defending Elliott, saying maybe, as Ernest says there, maybe with the pre-season, it will help him more. Very possible, Ernest, but I'm still struggling to see him get his minutes, even with another midfielder likely to come into the mix. Is he happy with that? Andy's saying she thinks Elliott is going nowhere. Time will tell on that, I suppose, Angie, but I am just struggling to see Harvey Elliott and Endo being at Liverpool next season. Those are not, as I said there, foregone conclusions by any means, but a midfielder is likely to come in, and I suspect those 2 depart. We'll see, eh? To the sexy bit, the forward line. This is the one that seems to have the most I don't know what you'd say, not heat on it, if that's the right phrase, the most interest. And it almost goes back, that Sam Maguire exclusive. Do you remember sort of early Feb where he said Liverpool are looking to revamp? And a lot of people scoffed at it, didn't they? A lot of people also scoffed at his report around Darwin Nunez and the Saudi interest. Let's be deadly honest. It was pretty much all proven right, wasn't it? It all came out from mainstream media, didn't it? That Al Nassr, I think it was, the Saudi club, were in talks with Darwin Nunez and were looking to do a late deal. However, Juan Duran ends up being the late incoming to Saudi there. It could have been Nunez. And as all the reports came out, Liverpool didn't want to do that deal, didn't have time to do a replacement, but would review it in the summer. I think this is a foregone conclusion. Maybe people think completely differently. David Lynch actually said on our Media Matters pod the other day, he actually used these words, so I'm not misquoting him. He's 100% certain that Nunez will move on this summer. The Saudi links still keep coming up, don't they? They keep being mentioned. I fully expect Darwin Nunez to depart this summer. I fully expect it to be to a Saudi club. Did anyone clock that clip, that little interview we did with Luis Diaz when they were joking about cars and money, etc., or all those bits? And he made a joke, didn't he, about Saudi money and then did that. And obviously, maybe it was a bit before we know what we know now, but that's just adding fuel to the fire. He is a cult hero for some, Darwin Nunez. I understand, but it's still hard to escape things like that miss against Aston Villa, isn't it? And when you look at the stats, 4 goals in 22 Premier League appearances, and think about that. Part of that was the double against Brentford, wasn't it? Yeah, so take that away from recently too. The goals have dried up. I actually think if you look at him as well, his confidence has dried up. It would not surprise me at all if everything was in place already almost for that move and it was just waiting for the summer for everything to be fully revealed. We'll see. But I would bet a serious pretty penny that Darwin Nunez leaves Liverpool maybe for decent money this summer. If you'd had to at the start, before the Saudi rumours broke in Jan, you'd probably be, for me, maybe 40, 50 million would be a decent return. Now you maybe add another 10 or so onto that. Either way, I fully expect Darwin Nunez to depart this one. Paolo saying there, Endo does have similar characteristics to Salah and Don Bless. Yeah, as I said, Paolo, I love Endo. He is absolutely a cult hero. I adore him, the way he plays, the way he puts his body on the line, the gum shield, the lot. I just struggle to see him being here next season. We'll see. Mike's there saying, if Nunez had cost 20, 30 million on next, there will be an issue, but you can't cost that and not be consistent. Yeah, I don't really see how it's said any other way. It's a big money signing that we've had the evidence for 3 years now. It just hasn't worked. So Darwin Nunez is the first one to depart for me. And I said the first one because it comes back to that article of Liverpool plotting an overhaul. And what does that mean? I think there'll be 2. I genuinely think there will be 2. And I won't be popular when I say this, but I'm expecting Luis Diaz to leave this summer. He's nearly left Anfield before, just to be clear on that. He is 28 years old. He's got 2 years left to go on his deal. That's a key time, as we know, for Liverpool. The age, the years left on the deal, it's either tends to be now renewal or move. Yes, there is an element in recent times of running down, but that's not standard Edwards' MO, if we're completely honest, is it? Luis Diaz. And every time you're saying the name, probably like me, you're always singing in your head, na 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 na. And he was brilliant against Newcastle the other night. Absolutely brilliant. That is the peak Luis Diaz is capable of. Brilliant performances like that. We've seen them at times this season under Arne Slot. Cannot get away from that. What we also see from Luis Diaz is the trough and the other end. The output looks okay this season, doesn't it? Around 2,500 minutes, 17 goal contributions, 13 goals. That looks decent, doesn't it? On the no two ways about it. And that's why the player is worth a pretty penny. It's just when you start to analyse that. I mean, the start of the season, look at that. The double against Bournemouth, he was brilliant. The double at Old Trafford, the early goals against Brentford. He started the season like a house on fire. And then you look at this run from almost the end of the year to now. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Premier League games. His last 11 Premier League games, 2 goals and 1 assist. So 3 goal contributions in the recent run. They do seem to have dried up a little bit for him that way. I don't think you can debate it. And it's funny, at the start of the season, where he was in the team, no doubt, bagging them, a house on fire, on a hot streak, and that's the word streak. Cody Gakpo was almost out the team, wasn't he? He's like, yeah, he's the relief for him. You can come in now and again, play the cups. That model or that perception has shifted, hasn't it? And I think the stats bear that out. There's no way Cody Gakpo was going anywhere this summer at all. Luis Diaz, though, I do expect to depart. It's interesting as well. Everyone knows Pipe Sierra, the Colombian journalist. He tweeted about it recently, saying there's no direct contact between Diaz and Barcelona. That it just keeps coming up, and the dad doesn't help, does he, at the same time? But it could be ignited if the contract talks don't go anywhere. Here's the thing. Would they renew Luis Diaz? Does it make sense to renew Luis Diaz at 28 and offer him a contract extension? I think we've hit his ceiling. I genuinely do. And there's nothing wrong with that. He's an excellent player. He's a real asset for Liverpool right now. I just think we will see him depart and a younger player come in. Maybe a player who can play left wing forward. Before people say, oh, it wouldn't be that simple. You never know. Liverpool like that versatility across the front line. But those are the players I expect to depart. Palacatano saying there, respect your view, but Endo ain't here next year. My 1986 Ian Rush signed Children's Encyclopedia will be burned. Paolo, say it again, mate. Desperate for him to stay. Just don't see it. Ernest there saying picks for the attacking options. Nunez must go. I think there seems to be unanimous agreement. I can't see any different in the chat panel on this. Diaz likely because of his inconsistencies. Jota's third, maybe too injury prone. I suppose it does come back to this as well. The similarities between Jota and Diaz are pretty startling when you look at it here. If you think about it, both 28 in the summer. Both will have 2 years left to go in the summer. Big decision time. The opposite is Jota's never available. Diaz's availability is one of his strengths. You have to put that in as a varying differences, stark differences for these two. Diaz, I suspect, probably wants out at the same time because he has not had a single renewal. Since he joined from Porto, he's not had a typical contract extension. It's important to say that because if you think Jota had one, Mane had it. For me, it's been typical that forwards who have performed at Liverpool quite quickly within 12 to 18 months, the stats, the facts show that have had a bump, an increase, an extension, whatever you want to put it as. He has not. That will be, I suspect, playing on his mind at the same time. So I think that goes into the mix. I just cannot see Luis Diaz being at Liverpool next season. And listen, he is a star. He's got magic. He's got stardust on his day. But that is where I think it sits. And people are also already going to war for Jota. I was saying there, Jota is a beast. Jota is an amazing player. For me, on his day, an elite 9. When is that day, though, now? It gets less and less, and not necessarily because of his ability, because of his availability. Part of being an elite player probably is availability. That comes into it. Even the other week, he was supposed to start against City, wasn't he? And Slot was honest that he was feeling it and came back against Forest, out again. It's the games you can get Diogo Jota on the pitch seem to reduce and reduce and reduce. For me, I think the market for Diogo Jota is reducing now, as in what people will be prepared to pay and how Liverpool then view that. I honestly think Liverpool will see Diogo Jota a little bit like Daniel Sturridge. That if you could imagine if you could have kept getting Daniel Sturridge on the pitch for 30 games a season, you know the return you will get out of him. I honestly think, for me, they will dwindle Jota down. They will not offer a renewal that he's possibly looking for. I know Sam Maguire wrote about it. There will be clubs interested. Even Arsenal, funnily enough, out of all teams were linked. They love an injured forward, don't they? I just don't think that market will necessarily be there for what Liverpool want. As in, if there is an offer, it'll be like, no, we're not selling for like 30, 40 million. So with that, maybe, just maybe, you let him run his contract down. That you think if we can get over the next 2 years 60 games from Diogo Jota, that is how I think they will see it. The aspect that could change is, do Liverpool get a decision to have to make? As in, does someone slap 50 million plus on the table for Diogo Jota? I think if someone does put down 50 million, there's a serious conversation between Hughes, Edwards, I think, in terms of availability, what it could do. I just don't think that will happen. And before someone's put in the chat panel, what about Mo Salah? Did you not hear me earlier? We have to beg, steal, borrow, pawn a kidney if we have to keep the best player in the world right now. There is zero doubts about that one at all. We're almost not treating him as part of the conversation just because we all know what needs to happen there. Yeah, Mike also saying, I do think that plays a part. Luis Diaz, I think, will feel a bit shortchanged right now as well with the situation. Mike also asks, and this is the way I wanted to finish this, because they're a little bit separate. What about the youngsters we'll have to make decisions on who will go out on loan and who will be sold? I think there is the real future for the likes of Trey Ione, maybe a loan next season. He's one I wanted to talk about. James McConnell, I expect a loan. I do like James McConnell. Just got a viciousness or something, a good nastiness to him, a bit of bite about his game. He did well in PSV. We've seen him do well in that cup final. I think he's got the hallmarks of a Liverpool player. He just has to physically develop. Jayden Danns, I expect the same. It's a shame what's happened with Danns, hasn't he? He's on loan at Sunderland, but I don't know what the injury is. Maybe someone can tell me that. But that's almost ruining his time at the moment. I think it's too early to say if there is a Liverpool future. And I like Jayden Danns. Whatever it is, he's got it. It's just the standard for the forward line is insane. You have to remember that. Liverpool's 6 forwards. The one people will say, you've not really talked about too much. Does anyone actually expect Chiesa to be here next season? Does anyone actually expect a pedigree like that, an Italian international with Champions League experience, to accept playing? I think it's 270 minutes at last look. Yes, he's had to build up his fitness. Yes, we've heard the talk of a mini pre-season. But Chiesa's far too good to be doing this, isn't he? There will be interest in him. And it felt like a 10 million punt, I want to call it, an educated punt, so to speak, from Richard Hughes. But I would be absolutely astonished beyond belief if Chiesa is happy to be here next season. Just the way I see it. Maybe everyone sees it differently, but I almost played that as a straightforward answer. We'll see if the chat panel agrees with that. The other sort of youngster I wanted to call out, who I think will be departing Liverpool, this will not be popular. Ben Doak. Ben Doak is one of those players that is rapid, excites, is direct at a winger, is young, has potential. All those things you will put a tick against. You'd think it seems a good loan. He's doing very, very well under Michael Carrick, isn't he? there's a difference between doing well in the Championship, showing that potential, and being a long-term successor to a Mo Salah. I just can't see it. Now, if you look at recent stories as well, and let's just be factual, Ben Doak had a bid rejected, didn't he? I think £60 million from both Crystal Palace and Ipswich Town. It was quite clear Liverpool made the briefings that 30 million quid was what they were looking for. That's always the starting scale, isn't it? If you meet in the middle, I think Ben Doak will go for somewhere around the £25 million mark. It feels a little bit like a Carvalho style transfer. You know, when they got that money out of Brentford with the add-ons as well. That is what I think will happen. Just because Ben Doak maybe, and I'm saying this, I don't think will come into the Liverpool first team, that does not make him, we're not 12, it's not good, we're not bad. I just think the standard to be in that Liverpool forward line is insanely, insanely high. Look who he'd be competing against next season. You hope? Salah, Gakpo, Jota, probably someone else coming in, and the others. It's just, where's he going to get his minutes? I know people are going to say, "Oh, it's the cups," but is that enough now? Do you not think now he's playing for the Championship? I know he's had a knock for Michael Carrick's Middlesbrough, so he's been out recently. But when he's been fit, he's getting first-team football. I just don't see it. And I would love to be wrong with Ben Doak, and I mean that. I would love to be wrong. I'd love for him to come back, tear it up pre-season. But even if he does tear it up pre-season, I believe it will be the prelude to a move somewhere. We will see. There you go, ladies and gents. We've talked the back. We've talked goalkeeper exits, fullback, centre defence. There's big question marks. Midfield, we love the starters. 5th and 6th choice, they've probably got decisions to make themselves, haven't they? Despite the fact that they're adored by many, and quite rightly. The forward line, as has been talked about, there may well be a revamp coming. No doubts. I think 1 certain to leave. 2, there's a good chance. 3, struggling to see it. But who knows until the summer. And probably a good place to finish there, because Mike's saying, but who can play on the left of Salah's side? You're going to get a successor unless he leaves, unless they can play across the front. So Doak may be a short-term option. It's possible that Ben Doak stays. I don't say that with certainty, absolute certainty will leave. I just made my case. I do feel there's real... I think facts on my side is too strong, but when you look at all the evidence, I think that's what it stays to us. Doesn't mean I'm right. Only the summer will tell. And I know there's a few comments coming in, people, about what about this incoming? This was a show purely about departures and who we think could be heading for the exit at Anfield this summer. And to rewind back to the start, just to be crystal clear, this is not being derogatory about any of our players. These boys, all of them, can finish this season with a Premier League winners' medal. I was drooling when I say that. Possibly a Champions League, a great shot at a Carabao as well. Does that mean all these boys are likely to be at Anfield next season? Only a fool says yes to that. Arne Slot has talked about it, hasn't he? And saying that they're already planning, now they've analysed the squad for next summer. There are changes afoot, be it in any of the lines of the defence, the keepers still, the midfielders and forwards. There's real questions that will be answered. I've given you my thoughts. We'll only find out fully as the summer approaches. But there we go. Hope for some entertaining Saturday afternoon viewing for you. I was Dave Davis, and that was the Transfer Show special